The National Association of Nigerian Students has called off its proposed nationwide protest over the new Tax Reform Act following engagements with the Federal Inland Revenue Service and other government bodies. The decision was contained in a communiqué issued at the end of the maiden expanded National Executive Council meeting of the association, which reviewed the law and earlier concerns raised by the student body. NANS had earlier threatened to mobilize students for mass protests on January 14, 2026, if the implementation of the law was not suspended pending the outcome of a National Assembly investigation and wider public sensitization. According to the communiqué on Tuesday by the NANS president, Olushola Oladoja, the student leadership held consultations with the National Assembly, the Department of State Services and the Federal Inland Revenue Service, during which FIRS officials briefed student leaders and addressed their concerns. Oladoja said, subsequent to this position, the national leadership of NANS was engaged by several government agencies and departments, including but not limited to the National Assembly, the Department of State Services, and the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Attendants included members of the National Executive Council, NANS, National Association of University Students, President and Senate President, National Association of Polytechnic Students, President and Senate President, National Association of Colleges of Education Students, President and Senate President. NANS Zonal Coordinators across the 6 geopolitical zones of the Federation, Joint Campus Council Chairmen across the Federation, Association of Nigerian Female Students, National President and Secretary. National Association of Female Students President and Secretary, selected student leaders, policy experts, and other critical stakeholders. Following the conclusion of the National Assembly's investigation, whose report has now been published in the public days prior to this meeting, the expanded National Executive Council of NANS, in collaboration with all structural student bodies, provided a platform for tax experts from the FIRS to educate student leaders, clarify gray areas, and respond comprehensively to concerns expressed by the Nigerian masses about the new tax reform law. After the briefing and consideration of the National Assembly's investigation report, the NANS president said the law was aimed at strengthening revenue generation, protecting low-income earners and ensuring more equitable tax contribution. He noted that the association resolved to support public enlightenment on the provisions of the law and affirmed the authenticity of the version released by the National Assembly, announcing the suspension of the nationwide protest earlier fixed for the 14th of January 2025. Oladoja said, after extensive deliberations, presentations, and engagements, the expanded National Executive Council of NANS resolved as follows: that the new tax reform law is a deliberate and well-intentioned law aimed at improving Nigeria's economy, strengthening institutional frameworks for revenue generation, with deliberate provisions to protect low-income earners and vulnerable citizens. That the law does not target the poor, instead, it strengthens social protection while ensuring that higher income earners contribute more equitably to national revenue, preventing lopsidedness and unnecessary tax burdens on a few. That the law provides for centralized revenue generation with a clear and transparent sharing formula across the federal government, state governments, and local governments. That ENEC affirms the authenticity of the tax reform law as officially released by the National Assembly following the conclusion of its investigation. That, consequent upon the above resolutions, NANS hereby calls off the proposed nationwide protest earlier scheduled for the 14th of January 2025. He also said NANS passed a vote of confidence on the executive chairman of the Nigeria Revenue Service, Zaka Dedeji, and commended President Bola Tinubu for ongoing fiscal reforms and student-focused initiatives.